differences between the private sector and public sector. So here you have the differences. One by one we will be taking up the points and discussing it. So in the first column we have the point of differences, that means the basis on which the differences are made. Then we have points related to the private sector, and then we have points related to the public sector. Clear? So taking point number 1, let's begin our discussion. Point number 1 says formation. The formation of the private sector enterprise involves a long process, whereas for a public sector enterprise it can be formed in a short time just by the government's decision. Clear? Formation, private sector, it is a long process. Public sector, it is a short process. Objective. Private sector have the objective of earning profit, and public sector have the objective of providing services to the public. Okay, so they have a service motive. At the same time, the private sector have profit motive. Point number 3, management. The private sector enterprises are managed and controlled by the board of directors, who are professionals and expert people. But who are the public sector enterprises managed by? They are also managed by the board of directors. But who are these board of directors? They are the representatives of the government. But over here, they are the professional experts. Understood? Management. Point number 4 says capital. So what do we have in capital? In private sector enterprises, the maximum capital is contributed by the owners or investors. That means those private individuals. Understood? But in public sector enterprises, the capital is given by the government. Most of the funds are financed by the government. Next point, freedom of operation. In private sector enterprises, there is more freedom of operation compared to the public sector. But in public sector enterprises, there is less freedom compared to the private sector. Clear? Next point, accountable. It says the private sector enterprises are not directly accountable to the general public. Means they are not answerable to the general public. Whatever they feel like they can do, they are not answerable to anyone. Okay? But in public sector, the enterprises are accountable to the general public, as their activities, their performances are discussed in the parliament. Clear? Point number 7 says employees. The private sector enterprises recruit and select their own employees, have their own rules of regulations. We all know this. But in public sector, what happens? The government rules and regulations are formed or has to be followed for any kind of recruitment, any kind of remuneration, any kind of appointment. They have their own rules, but over here government rules have to be followed. Point number 8 says performance evaluation. So how do we understand whether a private sector is doing good or not? We check the economic gains. That means we check the profits. If it is earning profit, it is good. If it is going into losses, it is bad. Just on economic gains, just on monetary basis, we are checking. But for public sector, what happens? Not only economic gains, but many other non-economic issues are also taken into consideration. Now, what are those non-economic issues? Remember, while starting off with today's class, I told you that even if the public sector is doing good in developing the infrastructure, in removing the monopoly, and various other fields, but at the same time there is underutilization of resources, there is poor planning, there is inefficiency in management. Okay, so those points are also considered while valuing these public sectors. Profit is okay, you are earning profit, you are earning losses, it's okay, but these factors like inefficiency, planning, staffing, underutilization, overutilization, wastage of resources, these are also taken into consideration when we talk about the public sector. Clear? So that was an overall idea that we got about the private sector and public sector through this differences. So that is all for today. We'll meet you in the next video. Thank you.